Hey everybody, thank you for coming back to my channel, Gardening with 1D and Zone 5D. My name is Janelle, and I'm here today on the shore of Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan has a big contribution to our weather. Right now our water temperature here is around 40-ish degrees, and then on days where the air temperature is warmer, what does that do? It makes fog. So along the shoreline here, this will be like dense fog advisories and such. The other thing too is such a large body of water, it takes a long time for this to heat up so that it's comfortable for swimming in. Now people swim in it in June, July, August. The water temperature doesn't get really warm until September, and then it starts cooling down again. The water temperature right along the sand always is going to be warmer than the water temperature the further that you get out. And that's just because it's shallow and the sun can warm it a lot easier. This lake is about 290 feet deep on the average, but there's an area kind of out this way going north up into Door County called the Chippewa Basin, and that area is actually 920-ish feet deep. So you can see why this lake can't freeze over in the wintertime. Maybe in like lots of history or something, to go way back, there might be years where there was a claim to it that it froze over. That's possible. I've never really researched that part. I spend my winters reading about the shipwrecks of the Great Lakes. And most of you know the most recent one in modern day history was the Edmund Fitzgerald. There's about 550 shipwrecks out here in Lake Michigan. And then the other thing too, it's the deadliest out of the 5 Great Lakes, meaning that there's a lot of rip currents that pull people under and they drown. So whenever they put a rip warning out, don't mess around. Don't mess around, because you'll get sucked under and they won't find you. They'll find you later, but not in ideal conditions. The other thing too here is this lake, since it doesn't freeze over in the wintertime, this is how we get lake effect snow. And the temperature here along the lake is always going to be probably about 10 degrees cooler than inland, maybe even a little bit more. So on days where people are baking inland, like maybe in the Green Bay area or something, it's not uncommon for a lot of people just to come to the lake just to get a little relief. So if it's like in the low 90s in Green Bay, it might be in the low 80s here, maybe in the upper 70s too. And this is kind of why I don't plant things in the ground until closer to Memorial Day. I shouldn't say that. I don't plant my tomatoes and peppers in the ground until Memorial Day weekend. This coming week, it's going to be a little bit cooler out. I do have some things in the ground, like, cabbage, kohlrabi. I put my onions in the ground yesterday. The other thing, too, is that storms can whip up out here on the lake really fast. I talked to somebody that served in the military, and he was on aircraft carriers in the ocean, and I asked him, would he prefer sailing on the lakes or the ocean? I expected the Great Lakes. And he said, hands down, the ocean. And I said, really? That surprises me. And he goes, no, because a storm will whip up on you so fast out in the Great Lakes, and if you're so far out, you won't have time to make it to a safe area. Good point. Like I said, there's about 550 shipwrecks here in Lake Michigan alone, and I know that when the Pierre Marquette fleet was losing their ships, there was one out here further south, but they were trying to save their ferry by rolling rail cars off that were loaded with things like beaver furs, dishes, and things like that. The ship, unfortunately, still did sink. And that whole fleet was developed by a Scotsman who, his biggest lake is the Loch Ness over in Scotland. So he was comparing to the Loch Ness as to Lake Michigan and Lake Superior and Lake Huron, Ontario, and Erie. And there's just no comparison. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to show you. You can't see across the lake. It takes 4 hours by car ferry. I've been on that car ferry. It's kind of a fun ride. I always kind of like to go and watch what comes in on the car ferry too. Sometimes you'll see like a whole motorcycle club or a tractor club. Sometimes it's people in motorhomes. There's always semis because this stretch going across gives a driver 4 hours of rest. And then that takes them out of Chicago and Indianapolis, and then they can just go on. So anyway, that's what I know about Lake Michigan. I do read a lot about the shipwrecks over winter. It's always kind of a fascinating topic for me. Like the most common one I think that people know about is the Edmund Fitzgerald, which went down in the 70s. So with that, I think I will just let you take in the view for a few minutes. I'm so glad you joined me. One day maybe I'll come out here when the lake is just roaring, when there's a lot of waves that crash over the lighthouse over there. That's always kind of cool to see. So thank you so much for joining my channel. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again. Bye.